good afternoon, Leanne. And now we just found out that my ability to do time zones perfectly is less than I thought. For some reason, I thought you were in Eastern, and you're not in Eastern, but you were able to join us right at noon Pacific time, which is
perfect.
Right when we normally have one of our meetings at the beginning of the month. And so thank you for being our guest today on continuing our series on nutrition. And I know, we had a couple topics come up. One of them was talking about the New York Times article, which actually just came in print today, but was online earlier this week about gut health. There are 5 facts your gut experts want you to know. And then we also had several of us have gone through procedures, whether it's surgery and or other medical procedures, and wanted to talk a little bit about how do we start eating again and not lose tremendous amounts of weight. So I know that there are people who will be chiming in with comments, and feel free to post your comments wherever you are, whether you're directly on our StreamYard feed or on our Facebook feed or our YouTube feed, and we'll see them in there. But first of all, how are you doing, Leanne?
I'm good. I'm so glad to be here. Yes, I'm glad I checked in. I'm trying to stay ahead of myself, so I did, and I was ready to go. These are topics, and if you followed us, you know that GI health is very big on my list of things that we think are so important, and for patients that are working with the challenges of nutrition and neuroendocrine tumors. So this was something that is near to my heart in both ways. I think that it's a good article to really refresh that we need to be, that what's normal for one is not normal for everybody. Everybody is unique, and that how our GI tracts change even within the time that you're in treatment, and then within the time that we're just depends on where you are, and especially when you're having procedures done that may have periods where you're dealing with more stress and more of a GI tract that needs to be used very, very delicately, and really specifically with some foods and fluids alternating in some ways that can really be beneficial. So this is something that I've worked on throughout my career, and that's a long time now. I'm blessed to still be able to bring back many of the things that I've done through the years and that have been successful. So some of this are things that we'll talk about the how-tos. But we can start today with some of this article, Josh. I think some of the things that this really, and we've posted this, I think everybody can see kind of the challenges that we have, and in acid reflux and heartburn, or and GERD in general, are extremely common among the aging population of Americans today, and that's in general. That's without any other kind of disease that we're dealing with. And so, as part of that population, neuroendocrine tumor patients dealing with neuroendocrine tumors are part of that. On steroids, let's say, you tend to have more complications than somebody that may already be happened to someone else. Yours may be worse, and so we want to make sure that we know how to use these terms. And what's specific for you, and what we're having trouble with. Gas overall can be a complication that we're dealing with in all areas of treatment, and some of them are specific to different things, and some of them are specific to different areas of the body. So in this, they're talking about acid reflux, and this is what when you're talking about GERD, or if that's part of your diagnosis, is gastro reflux, and there that is something that Many times we'll use specific medicines with some of these things are to reduce acid. We know in neuroendocrine patients too, or anybody now, we don't want prolonged use of some of the pro
PPIs.
PPIs. Yeah, thank you, Josh. Getting old. PPIs, so that because they over long term they can even in themselves increase the possibilities of some tumor growth or tumor in their own through research. And I think things are updated all the time, but that's something that we really are trying to avoid. But for short term use, in particular, these are used and also different types of protonics, and that's something that your physicians and just antacids and different treatments can be somewhat simple and sometimes, but should be also associated when you take them. So if you're taking any of these medications, make sure that timing is one of the most important things in dealing with medications associated with and they spoke on this that regular use of these calcium supplements or calcium and antacids can increase the risk of different diseases in kidneys. And I think that that's interesting. There was another article out, Josh, today that I thought was worth mentioning as well, and it was that the use of supplements, herbal supplements, and just supplements of vitamin supplements, and really it was dealing with the fat soluble vitamins, of course, because they do store in the liver. But it said that stated 20% of people that use supplementation, including multivitamins, had a liver damage occur. Liver involvement. So that's what we've been trying to avoid. We really want. That's why we talk so much on natural sources, and we've been talking about the use of one of the references that some people have purchased, and I still think that it's such a great guideline for people that really are interested just to go that extra mile in information. Is the that genomic kitchen book that we've been working on, and Josh, you know which one I'm talking about,
right? Hacking the genome.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hacking the Genome Kitchen. I have it. I have not done the full read on it yet, but I'll try to bring that up.
I pick it up and I work on one little area that I'm interested in time. But this is it does talk about the prebiotics and the probiotics and trying to set the normal flora in your GI tract to try to avoid some of these complications associated with all of these GI problems that we're talking about right here. That can help benefit. And probiotics have been used for a long time in helping reset the what we say the good bacteria in your GI tract. Many times we've had surgery, that's a challenge because prolonged MPO status, sometimes associated with these surgeries, or just real slow GI tracts. Remembering that many times. When you have, especially surgeries that involve organs, you put a lot of stress on the body, and this needs a lot of protein for healing. And the GI tract uses proteins to digest. Quite a few, a lot of proteins go throughout the day to just digest food.
So one of the questions just came in, of course, was, how do we look at, you said long-term, short-term use of PPIs. Can you define what the long-term and short-term use means?
Well, it's something that is usually 6 weeks is what we consider. I believe 6 to 8 weeks, something like that, is a short-term use. So short-term use, you've gone to the doctor and you've had, you've really having this trouble and it's keeping you uncomfortable enough to use a medication, then it's usually in a 6 week is what's recommended, and reevaluation at the time. Now you may be continued beyond that point, but what the important thing is that somebody's monitoring you at certain intervals, and that you just don't stay on these. You went to the doctor. I think what we see, Josh, and what we worry about mostly is, or I think I worry about mostly. Let me be very specific. My concerns when I was seeing, and I talked to people, because we know that there's neuroendocrine tumors that may occur related to this long-term use. So people that go in and may see a GI once and they put them on them, and you can get them over the counter, correct? So you just kind of keep yourself on them, and you keep yourself on. You don't go back for these checkups, and that's real concerning because then there's nobody monitoring you, monitoring if you've had the bacteria. I mean, acid is there for a reason. Acid's in our stomachs for a reason. It's there for digestion and for many things. So when we decrease it beyond a point of need, then we could create other problems and ulcers and different things that we know that can be damaging. So nothing should be done prolonged without monitoring and letting somebody know.
And of course, making sure that your medical staff knows that you're on either the calcium or the PPIs, because they can affect some of your blood levels as well. And certain tests are more sensitive to being on PPIs and can be right.
And but these things are just, I think that sometimes we don't see the serious, the things of some things you can get over the counter, get confused with, well, I don't need to tell anybody about it because it's over the counter. And so anything, don't think anything's not important in your treatment. And when you're taking care of people, everything's important. Just make sure everybody's aware of everything you're doing because some things do interact. And we want to, and you need to space them different ways. So do make sure that we have these things. But it's when you come into our office, we're going to ask you questions about, or back in the day when I had an office, but when I'm talking to people still, it's all I am. They used to call me the queen of poop, didn't they, Josh? That's how Dr. Waltron used to introduce me, because once you get with me, it's all about the GI tract. It's all about how things go in you and how things come out of you.
I thought
my entire time.
Dr. Go from UCLA, I used to call the king of poop, because that's why he got into the whole thing to start out with. I will say that was one of the things that made me read this article. And of course, coming out of a procedure myself, you don't have to poop every day. And I think that's a misconception and certainly those of us who do, and when it goes a little irregular, we get a little worried. But, you want to comment on this as well?
Yes, but I think that especially when you become normal, what becomes normal to you is frequency. After every time you eat, every time you have the mobility stimulation, and you're having stools, especially 4 and 5 times a day, but at least every day. And especially if that's how your body was normal, then in your mind, it's hard to just deal with the chat, mentally, with the fact that you're not having stools. Sometimes it can put a little more pressure on the GI tract, but sometimes it's just, the motility is just reduced. Sometimes it's because we were talking about digestion and protein and things just slowed down during times of surgeries and high stress. There's other healing that needs to be done by our body's mechanisms. So sometimes the digestion process is reduced. Sometimes medication many times that you have to use during the procedure too can reduce the motility of your GI tract. I think that but everybody's going to be different during this time, and as long as you're doing some monitoring of it, and you don't want to go more than 3 days. That's where our standoff is if you haven't gone 3 days, we want to know about it. It's kind of a 3-day, thing that you really should, within that length of time, probably have done that. As long as you're passing gas and not having pain. Now, if your stomach's bloating real bad and you're cramping so bad that you can't stand it, now that's a whole different, those are symptoms. But without symptoms, 3 days is, up to 3 days can even be normal. Some people they're normal anyway.
But also thinking through being constipated, certainly after a procedure, we are on a lot of either codeine or other drugs that cause, whether it's, I think about Zofran for all the nausea, but Zofran's also constipating.
Yeah.
So
So
how do
many of
we
these,
work through some of those things?
those are sometimes a time factor. I mean, it just takes time for those GI tracts to work. But do be careful. Don't still do the same. Make sure you're still keeping fluid on. Sometimes we use Miralax. It's real common for us to use something that helps try to keep the fluid back in the GI tract, which kind of naturally lubricates it. The I'm not a real extreme fiber kind of person until I get to that GI tract going. So I'm a lower fiber kind of person. So I keep you on
But
the other end of that.
doing things like Miralax, fluids,
Fluids, Miralax, juice.
Colace.
If you're
Yeah.
and juice on its own can cause stimulation of the GI tract. So we can do some of it with juices. Once we've gone through just the normal things. And take into consideration what's going on. There's medications that are available that can now that actually can cause people to have bowel movements. So there are medications. So that's why it's so important to stay in touch with your primary care people during treatments. Because they're going to be aware of these.
Especially given nets and bowel habits and gas habits. I thought the closing of the article was quite interesting, that the average healthy person passes gas 10 to 20 times a day. I didn't know it was that high, but
yes. It's normal. I mean, people do. Some people don't tell on themselves. Some people don't. It's culturally not acceptable. I think that's the thing about it. But if you don't express gas, you say it's patients that I have had experience with in crisis. Sometimes the GI tract may be obstructed for some reason. So somebody that really is not passing gas, it's a whole. We're dealing with something totally different. So I'm fine with the gas. If it's just gas and you're expelling it, then I'm fine with that. That to me is. I've had patients that we use charcoal mats and stuff because theirs were really uncontrollable. Sometimes after radiations with not necessarily nets, but sometimes with especially ovarian and different lower GI tract radiations, we see problems with the lower colon and malabsorption. The lower you go, some of that's the malabsorption can become a complication, and especially with everything. And that's what we go with. And kind of to the next point, so we don't get too far behind. Josh, I wanted to talk about why we have problems coming into, many of the things that we're working with coming out of surgeries in particular are treatments. Are just the changes in what brought you to a physician to go to in the first place, because that symptom or these symptoms just weren't normal anymore. And so I needed to seek a doctor to ask questions. And sometimes that's where, that's what we see. That's why people come in. But these things are caused many times by malabsorption. And so I did attach an article with the information that we're talking about today. That's my diet. Now we're going to talk about that in a second, but this is that. Did I send you a thing on just malabsorption, Josh?
No, this is what you sent. This is what you sent me today.
All right. Well, I'm going to send this in a minute. I thought I had it up, but but it talks about the different types of malabsorption, and just to identify that not all malabsorption is the same. We have different types of malabsorption. Carbohydrate malabsorption and it usually can cause diarrhea. And
I will add to the viewers that we have a new area on our website that will contain all the videos that we've done, as well as as you give us new articles, we will post them on the same page so that they'll be there for you in the future.
This article will be beneficial because I don't want to go through, but I just want people to know that all malabsorption is not the same. Many times the absorption is of different macronutrients. It is carbohydrates malabsorb. Sometimes the malabsorption that we see is related to particles going into the lower GI, into the GI tract unabsorbed, and these can cause the gas formations and then diarrhea and
there's a question
and things. So go ahead.
Right on the screen from Alexis that that has that exact questions. What really are the symptoms of malabsorption for nutrients?
Okay. Well, it's when they're gonna. It's usually, and I'm gonna read it in case I see. I don't want to see. People with malabsorption often have the diarrhea is one of the biggest side effects, and that's what I'm usually, especially after initial treatments, before we get you on a good management plan and into a good GI tract, just medications on board, reduce your output of stools. And as we do that, or as I'm headed there, I use the diet that we're about to talk about, and you'll see, and we'll talk about it because it works in most of the different types of malabsorption, but it's usually crampy, rapid stools. Sometimes if it's a fat, if it's carbohydrate, sometimes it'll just be kind of a floaty, fluffy little stools. They used to send people to me to kind of identify, what by your symptoms, what type of diarrhea you're having or what type of malabsorption you're having. And I would get to the fat malabsorption, which the fat malabsorption is the most common in neuroendocrine tumors related to the reduction in pancreatic enzyme lipase. We need lipase available to digest fats. And you reduce all pancreatic enzymes are reduced overall, but this is the one that's most affected and the ones that we see the most complications from. And this is where you get this real foul, floaty stool. And you can see sometimes the oil in the toilet itself. It smells really bad. And so people that have it kind of know it. Sometimes their spouse knows it, and they'll be the ones that used to tell me about it because, and people that have their gallbladders taken out may often have a combination of this type of fat malabsorption, which I do, and a combination, which really is the worst part of what goes with me. And I have malabsorption myself, so I really understand and I'm really sympathetic with it. But and that's bile salt malabsorption, and that's when we've had our gallbladders taken out many times. The bile seeps into the body, and it causes the malabsorption. This bile gets into the lower colon, and it just combines with other salts, and it's going to cause kind of an enema kind of effect. From no better term, it's just kind of a rapid emptying of the GI tract, and it can really burn your bottom.
And so the question was, what type of testing can one do? But you've described that you can kind of describe it just by
seeing what your stools look like,
right?
And there are some different. There are some. Josh, and if I can find it where it was, it used to be put out by. Trying to think. I think one of my drug companies, and it had a really great, but it had the I always get it wrong, get it mixed up with one of my skin scales, but it's the scale that gives you the different stools and what the normal stool like. Is it Breck? I had to look it up. Gosh, I don't do this often enough anymore, obviously. But it's a scale that they came up with, and they put the picture of the stool, and they tell you what's normal or fatty or too watery. And I'll put that up for us too, Josh, on our site. We'll have that up for us. But there are ways to to really give us those information. Sometimes a test, if you're lactose intolerant, you're going to produce a gas. But sometimes they can tell, and sometimes they used to, in old times, they would check an oxygen output to see if you utilize that carbohydrate because it produces CO2. But there's different things. So, but now really symptoms and understanding symptoms is the main part. We can use, pancreatic enzymes from different sources now. If we isolate what the problem is, for fat malabsorption, we use pancreatic enzymes. And that'll also cover the amylase that we have problems with from the just carbohydrate malabsorption, general carbohydrate malabsorption. It'll increase those too, as well as pancrease and enzymes for proteins and everything. But the main thing that we really get, and so some of those, if it's just carbohydrates, we can use, they're really made, they're missing the plant enzymes. And so papaya, papain can can digest carbohydrates quite often, and that's one way to see if that helps. Many times it's a carbohydrate malabsorption, just not getting it broken down quite enough, and that most of the basic over-the-counter foods for that type is made out of the papaya plant. So you can add papaya to your diet as well, and that's a good natural form of it. Bromelain is another form, and we get bromelain in pineapple. And so there are some natural sources of enzymes that are helpful in digestion, carbohydrates in particular, that really are helpful. Avocados actually have a little bit of their own lipase. And lipase, again, is the enzyme that you need to digest fats. So some people can digest that plant fat that it produces just because it has its kind of a little bit of its own thing going there, I believe. So some people will do okay with that. Some people won't. Sometimes avocado is real hard for people to digest. Some people do fine with it. So that's just really the individual and just how you do. Now, if it's guacamole, I can give you other reasons why you're not digesting. It might be some of the other things, and mayonnaise included. That you may not be doing well. We get to acids and especially carbohydrates. Some of the acids are in acidic fruits and vegetables. Tomatoes come to mind right off the bat. Many people cannot do tomato bases and tomato paste and things like that. Sometimes cooked down, they'll do better. Sometimes actually the fresh does better than the cooked down in many people. But proteins have a lot of acid. It takes a lot of acid to digest protein. So people that are on antacids may actually have problems breaking down the protein that we're trying to get you to consume. So that's another reason why we don't necessarily want people just to use antacids just at lib without letting somebody know in treatment, because sometimes it's beneficial to have enough to break down the foods for digestion, because that in itself can cause malabsorption. It's just not enough acid in the GI tract to break down foods. There is one GI cancer, neuroendocrine tumor, where we actually give acid supplements because they don't produce acid from those tumors. So there's different things that we have to do there. So, but proteins in general are hard to digest, and many times, in particular, beef, it can be hard to digest and be malabsorbed quite easily, and also it has a good bit of fat in it when consumed, unless you're using the loin. There's a couple low fat cuts on beef, and it's the pork loin, the loin, and the round. If you're using sirloin, tenderloin, those tend to be lean, and round roast, top rounds, eye round. So these things tend to be worked in better because you won't have the problem with at least the lipase malabsorption. But if you're having trouble with just the lack of acid, you may want to do better with fish. Is much easier to break down the proteins there. Chicken it's easier as well. Some people do better with different types of, even in the plant base, certain beans structures can really produce a lot of gas, and I think that becomes a complication especially in a group of diets where we have very high plant-based diets, just beyond what somebody probably post-op. Those are really the most complicated. Your body adjusts to pretty much what you do, and those things in the long run can be extremely helpful. But right after surgery, the gases that we have from raw fruits and vegetables tend to be a little bit more than the body can consume, and be comfortable with. So that kind of goes back to this diet, Josh. I guess we can go through that before we run out. Many years ago now, I was looking at the where I had signed, and this was when I was getting out of practice. Not when I was getting in. I went ahead and put my name on it when I was coming out because I had developed it and had. But I had finally put my name on it. And anyways, I said not to use it. And it says 2015. So this is something that I developed just from experience. I've treated many types of cancer through the years. And there's different symptoms from different types of cancers. And when I got in this, and this was a long time ago, when I started practice with Dr. Anthony, that was in 2002. That's a true over 20 years ago. Nobody had written a diet anything close to what to do with this particular problems that we were seeing in this group of people that I was seeing, because I was working with Dr. Anthony, and that's a lot of the people that we took care of were having problems, and many of them were associated with surgeries and just malabsorption. So I took what we did for several different problems and kind of combined them and put together what I called, well, doctor, I would have just called it what we would say post-gastrectomy diet. And that was really what I kind of built it on, was an old-fashioned post-gastrectomy diet. So for people with GI surgeries, when we were working in the hospital, these were diets that we would give to patients before they left the hospital. And they would give you instructions on foods to use and foods to avoid. And these things were usually softer in texture and easier for your body to break down. And I give you some clues of what we wanted you to follow. And one of the real important things is that you separate. This is to reduce diarrhea in particular. It reduces other complications, but diarrhea in particular, and gas, is to separate your liquids from your solids by 30 to 45 minutes. So with that being said, and then separate your meals into 6 small feedings instead of 3, so we put it into 4 to 6. Well, I worked with a wonderful physician through the years that would love to aggravate me for one thing, but he wouldn't let me get away with a post-gastrectomy, because that's not really what it was doing. What it was doing was increasing the transit time. These things are emptying into your GI tract. So I just started calling it preventing diarrhea due to rapid transit. So that's where this name came from, is I just made it up. It just was something that we all could agree on, that it was what really was going on. So we're saying that, yes, what you're doing is correct. It's symptoms of dumping syndrome, when the foods just go into your GI tract quickly and it just goes through you without and it can cause some real complications, such as a real weak and dizzy feeling. Sometimes you'll get flushed as well. It's usually within 30 minutes after you eat. You may have the cramping and pain, nausea, diarrhea, and sweating sometimes will occur. These can happen behind these GI surgeries as well as gastric surgeries. So I included that for knowledge, for you to understand that these are some of the symptoms that we I won't say common, but we expect some sort of these problems going in. So what this will do is try to give you tips. What I did was develop a way to give you tips preventing the most problems from as you initiate your diets, after surgeries, or when you're having problems with GI disturbances. So let's start with breaking down those foods to 4 to 6 small feedings. And I put down at the end of this, this is I included a meal plan, and I put an example and the serving sizes and the example of just a sample foods, but it'll give you the serving size of about how much you should have, and some of the foods that tend to do better. And I base this on and give some directions. And this is what I just gave y'all, is my handout that I gave every patient I saw when they left the hospital. I didn't want anybody to leave the hospital without this material. So it's old, but it's a jewel, and I don't practice anymore. So this is a dying jewel. We got to keep it out there for some people. Now, not everybody needs this, and you don't need it for many times for the longevity of the time that you're managing, but to have it and to understand it when you do need it. And especially when you're trying to figure out, what can I do? What's going to be the best for me to start with? Start simple. Start very simple. Baked chicken, boiled potatoes. For people that do pasta, just do it real light. Very little butter. Remember, the things that are going to cause the most trouble with fat malabsorption is going to be the fats. So that's going to be margarines, butters, cream sauces. Don't put anything on. Use broths. with your, to give you liquid back, use, fruit. I mean, not fruit. Well, you can use fruit juices as well. And I cook with fruit juices, and teach people to cook with things like that to add flavor and moisture to foods without adding fat. There's recipes where people have changed to applesauce instead of some of the fats, and cake mixes, and you're probably already seeing things like that. But with this meal plan, it starts with some of the things that I really wanted to stress today were, try to eat a source of protein with each meal, just a small amount of protein. And I'm not against red meat, and people that know me know I'm not against anything really in small parts and moderation. We know that there are some norms allowed. Remember that pork is considered a red meat, so it has to include them. But the American Cancer Institute of Research, American Institute of Cancer Research. I hadn't had to say that in a while. They provided us some guidelines, and they're okay with 12 ounces, 12 to 15 ounces of red meats allowed throughout the whole week. Now through the week, and so that, but allowing some is okay if you can tolerate it. Now that's where the question is. It has to be lean, and it has to be in small amounts. But eggs, remembering that the yolk of the egg has the fat. It's the white of the egg. If you're having trouble with fat malabsorption, especially coming out of hospitals, the whites of the eggs may be easier to tolerate, and that's where you're getting the protein from to heal with as anyway. So it's okay to just eat the egg whites or egg beaters or something like that if you need to. Tofu is a protein made from soy derivatives and soy beans, and it can be a protein replacement as well. Yogurt, low fat, and cheese, low fat, but they need to be low fat sources. You're going to limit concentrated sweets. This causes the most trouble and the most dumping. Sugar causes diarrhea because it causes the concentration in your GI tract to increase mobility. So things to expect, and then things that are high in fats and sugar together are really going to increase these problems. So watch out for and avoid anything that has more than 15 grams per serving of sugar. Straight up, 5 is the best, but nothing with more than 15 per serving at one time. Juice that includes, actually it's over 12. I'm rounding it to 15. It's actually 12. Anything that's beyond that is called considered what we call a concentrated sweets. And in the treatment of GI disturbances like this, we avoid concentrated sweets. So you're going to avoid cookies, cakes, sodas, syrups, juice. Something that would be candies, anything like that. Now, some people, and one of the things that I found, when especially real early in practice, when I'd been taking care of just general oncology, where I used nutritional supplements that you're familiar with, Ensure, Boost, all these Equate, whatever we were using from the stores. And in most patients, because we're trying to get in oncology, get what we call calorie protein density. We want everything that you consume to have protein and calories and nutrients, so that if you only have the ability to eat 5 bites, that in that 5 bites you've consumed something that makes a difference. So we call it concentration, density. So
a lot of our patients are using Kate Farm, for instance, which is nutritionally dense.
I like Kate Farm. I really do. I met. They came to one of the presentations that was going on at the Mary Perkins did their oncology conference for the state group, and I'm still included in that. So I got to meet them, and I do like their products. I think that they do a pretty good job with many of their integrals, even in tube feedings. Very natural, very easy to tolerate. I think it's turned around some of the diarrhea output, as well as some of our other oral. We've had success with several of our oral replacements in protein as well. So I think there are things out there that are showing some positive that we didn't have before. But that's one of them. Case gives you the whole density, gives you the protein, the calories, and just a little bit of something. And it's not high in concentrated sweets. And that was a problem, is that people were consuming, when I got to working with the with Dr. Anthony, and we were doing these this post care on these surgery patients, we were seeing that they just could not tolerate these calorie dense foods. Because you don't have the enzymes, the medications that you're using, and you need to use. This is I'm pro what you were doing. We have to do the management that way, but we got to treat the side effects. And the side effects of using octreotide is it reduces the pancreatic enzyme in your systems, and it reduces a lot of actions of the body that the endocrine system supports. So you're going to have changes in the endocrine system expression of hormones and enzymes. So and if you haven't heard that, that's something that I always say when I'm talking to people, is that remember that the medication combined with the disease can cause symptoms. But the medications that we have to use are many times used, as well as treatments. And anybody that's gone through treatments, there's side effects from these. And these are things that we have to just adjust the diet to. And so that you can consume these calories and consume these proteins in a way that your body can absorb it. Because that's what's important, is that we're able to get the foods and fluids that your body can absorb, so that we can increase your intake of calories and protein. But it can't be like they're telling you for everything else, because if you're having you can eat as much as you want to, but if you're having stools behind it, 4 and 5 stools, you're losing those nutrients. So we have to make sure that you adjust your diet, and sometimes this can cause it to be a little bit lower in sugar, a little lower in calorie. Fat makes it lower in calories overall, and lower many times that can keep you. And so when you go to that, you tend to lose weight. So it's real important that we increase your meal plan so that you have meals 6 times a day, and you put your fluids in between that to be 3 to 4 times a day, so that you're getting small amounts, but you're still consuming those calories. And you need to this plan, I think it gets us at least to 22. What does it do? 2022, but many people have to go above that. I'm sorry, Josh, go ahead.
And so looking at the question on the screen, I think you just kind of did your answer a little bit, but when you're reintroducing foods, I think
yes,
your point is to make it really small meals.
Particles small. Make the particles small so that the saliva, remember that digestion, I'm just squirming all over. My chair's getting uncomfortable. Sorry. The saliva can starts the digestion in your mouth. So if you break down the particles as much as you can, the better chance of starting those enzymes, the solutions that we have to start breaking down those foods. And we start at the mouth. And so first of all, you need to stay hydrated, so you have, have some fluids in your mouth when you have foods. Because remember, when you smell foods and see foods, that starts the secretion of fluids, and those enzymes coming into your mouth starts those break down. So sometimes I had patients use foods that are broken down much, even to chop them. There's some patients that I have put on baby food texture before, Josh, the years. And remember, there's patients that we feed intravenously prior and after, and people that know and were in practice or saw us in practice know that we were very aggressive nutritionally, sport-wise. So that was not unusual for somebody that just had a failing GI tract for us to put them in hospital and put them on TPN prior to a surgery, to build them back up. So there's different levels of what you need, but usually post-op, if you're really having trouble, try to get things that are easy to absorb. Mashed potatoes, because it's broken down. And one problem that we don't always talk about is chewing is fatiguing. Drinking through straws can cause fatigue. And some parts of it needs to be already broken down, just so you don't have to chew as many times. So things that naturally come to mind that might be broken down pretty easy: English peas, carrots that are diced already, meat that's already diced, already cut up, baked, chop it already up. That's why chicken salad that you put in the blender, is sometimes, or just the chicken that you put in a blender. When I give people recipes for a chicken salad, for those people that may not have seen any recipes from me before, or replacement, I would use a baked chicken. And if you're tired and you want to use a rotisserie chicken, that's fine. At the grocery store, those are still pretty lean. Some people you can tolerate those pretty good, but you can just boil some chicken, and then go ahead and chop it up very good. You can use those old hand pounders, for back in the day. Those as you do those that do it. You can put it, get fancy, put it in a blender or a chopper if you want to, but it just get the particles down. When I'm doing chicken, I put it in the blender. I don't know who else does this. I put it in the blender with just the whip, with the whip things, and put just a little bit of use your low fat yogurt, your non fat yogurt, or sour cream. But I prefer the yogurt. I think that it's tolerated better. See, and there's that calorie density. It's low fat, so we're having a little bit better tolerate. Some people can't tolerate dairy, but there's non-dairy yogurt usually available in many places now. You could use tofu there. Tofu would work in that chicken salad, but just a little bit to blend it up, and then that's going to get that particle down, and then had that and eat that with just little crackers, and that might be what I have you eat, a couple of times a day. Potatoes. I tend to use a lot of mashed potatoes and mashed foods in general. Carrots, souffles, because you're used to seeing that. And in a souffle, for those that don't cook, souffles most times have eggs, just beat up in a vegetable. Spinach souffles is just kind of a chopped up spinach and beat in an egg whites. Really, you fold in egg whites, but you can just do it as easy as just putting the egg in there. And quiches can be good.
I did not think we would get to souffles today. No, that was not on my bingo card.
But they do work great. Think about the souffle, Josh. It's your egg whites, right? And you're going to cook it some, and that gets over the part that I have trouble with egg whites. Matter of fact, don't eat meringues because meringues are not cooked. That's a raw egg, and unless that's a pasteurized egg, could cause a foodborne illness. But a cooked egg is great, and so look at that. So now if we use it in what I was just saying, sweet potatoes or carrots, you have some nutrient density to those protein, and it's a complete food. But it's broken down. It's easier to tolerate than many foods that you may try. Quinoa is tolerated fairly well, and it has protein in it, and it's a little small seedy thing. What is it? Grain that does well. Couscous. See, it's a small particle, and it can be done very low fat, and it works well. But fish, tuna fish. The particles, use the one that's no fat in it. And you can do that and you can put that on crackers or just a fold over sandwiches. And I'm just too Southern, but what people know is just a half a sandwich where you just take bread and flop it together, flop sandwiches, but just that size. But to get the calories you need, you're going to have to do it throughout the day. Applesauce or blended fruits are easier to consume than an apple. That makes sense, right? It's hard to digest that apple. So don't think you have to. You're not doing better just by using the muscles in your mouth to think that it'd be better for me to consume a whole apple because it sounds healthier. Broken down applesauce. That's kind of this consistency that we're looking for. Chopped. Chop as much as you can. People that are having to do their own cooking, buy it chopped because the fatigue and it can be troublesome. Back off of onions and garlic. Just back off. Get your seasonings down to salt and pepper, light pepper for a while. Just a little bit of sodium and a little bit of pepper for a little while. Just don't even do too much with herbs. Lemon's fine. Usually a little lemon to flavor with, light flavors to start with. Get all the, and I'm a cayenne kind of girl, but get all the cayenne and anything like that out for a while. Things can just be overwhelming to the GI tract. And a lot of times we just take it for granted because, our systems tend to overcome. But It'll really talk to you after surgery. I've had them. I had a liver. I don't have neuroendocrine tumors, but I had a hemangioma that ruptured in my liver, and Dr. Boudreaux had to save me. And so I've had a big surgery, a big liver surgery before, and gallbladder taken out, and so I know the challenges. And usually, when you mess with the liver, and anybody that's having liver issues or liver surgeries, for no better term, and I don't mean to say just flat out how it is, but when you mess with your liver, you piss it off, you make it mad, and it really, really reacts. And it's going to make you feel bad for at least a week. Just hang on, sip broth, light toast,
or a week or more.
more. I mean, that's just at the minimum. I mean,
Yeah.
and I don't want to scare anybody off or anything. I mean, but I'm just telling you, I just want you to know it burns a lot of calories. The liver regeneration is something that really takes a good bit of healing, and it burns a lot of calories. So it's going to burn about 2 to 3 times when we do. We have different levels of how we calculate how much we think you're going to expend. We call it energy expenditure. Liver is one of the highest. Cancer can be high, but liver is one of our highest. So for a while, you may burn a lot of calories. You may see a lot of weight loss real suddenly. Keep trying to sip things. That's why it's important to put things in between. Low fat, very, very low fat, using those non-fat yogurt type things or bases. Little fruit smoothies and things can be used, but really break it down. Don't go and get any of these specialty things. And now I'll tell you, after I just saw that 20% show up with that article that I saw today, it makes me know that we're on the right track to keep that to a minimum. Everybody's wanting to try to find something in a bottle that's going to make us well, and I understand the theory, I really do, but we're still going to be better off with our own natural products. So things that we can use: bananas, papaya we talked about earlier. Pineapple's a little hard on because it has too much fiber in it. We want things that are real low fiber. And if you look at my list, because I don't want to just read the sheet to you, you can do that, and I want everybody to look at it. But let me just read a few of these things off real quick, Josh, before we run out of time. So some of the things that I put people on after surgery, and we're talking about some people for a lifetime. So some of the things that you have in your head put together that is healthy. Healthy is what your body absorbs. It's not what somebody put in media for a diabetic down the line and cardiac problems. Okay, it's what your body absorbs. So going to that, our complex carbohydrates, we try to do less in fiber, especially at first, less than 3 grams. And then we want it high in soluble fibers. And soluble fibers are the insides of fruits and vegetables. The outside, the insoluble fiber, is hard to digest, and it goes through our systems and goes out in our stool. And it can cause the gas and the cramping. So we try to peel things, to go ahead and take that peeling off and try to avoid those seeds and especially the skins on the fruits and vegetables. Things that have a lot of fiber, like celery is a great example. It's very fibrous. At least take off the back end of it, kind of use your little peeler and scrape off a little bit, and then saute them down, kind of break that structure down. Sauteing vegetables can change their components and structures, and those can help with absorption. Some nutrients are just hard to absorb. Raw onions are one of those. It's just what's produced. The sulfates are hard to absorb. And some foods just produce too much gas. So cruciferous vegetables are some of those, and that is broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts.
Brussels sprouts, right?
And those,
one of the questions on condiments was mustard. Where does that fall into the
mustard? Mustard, really, for the most part, is really one of those things we find that we can use, and the mustard seeds can be, pretty tolerated. Don't use if you're worried, if you're having intolerances of gas, stay away from the brown ones that have the stone, and get into some of the some of them even have the different heats to them now. But just basic old mustard powder, those tend to do fine. It really just has vinegar in it. It's just usually a vinegar base with the powder. So that usually is tolerated, and that can be used for flavor. Some things can do, I could get into some other things like basil. Sometimes when you're getting into chicken and you're tired of, the basics, you can get into some natural herbs. I grow all these, my herbs. And so they know they're clean and they're not very expensive. Actually, they're so easy. If you have a pot in the backyard, put you some basil seed in. It really just that easy. So those tend to work well. Things the carrots cook down, but very, very soft. I say southern soft. Come back. You have to get like what we do it down here. You have to cook it tender. And I'm talking southern soft. It needs to be mashable. Nearly everything that you eat at first, especially after surgery.
So
Really
I've never heard the term Southern soft, but I really do
southern
like it because I know coming off of my procedure, I did like carrots, but I liked them when they were roasted for 20 minutes at 415, and they were, I guess, Southern soft.
Yeah. You want it to be able to be mashed with a fork. So that just helps break down all the fiber that you're having trouble with. And kind of begin those processes of naturally using what's there to help break down itself. The tender meats, fish, poultry, cook it well. Just for that reason, just to make sure that we bacteria, right, especially after surgery. We don't want to, sometimes food poisoning can send you back to the hospital and we're not too sure why. So make sure that really, be careful with your temperatures, check your temperatures on your food and cook things. I don't recommend sushi, raw, sashimi, whatever, after, procedures, and raw oysters and things like that. We really avoid. Everything needs to be cooked.
And I certainly read that raw oysters for anyone who has liver disease is probably not a great idea.
No, that's right. The diabetics, carton seed, we don't use them. We just, and now you really, even down here where we really traditionally use them a lot, or consume them a lot, are using more grilled, in restaurants, even that's kind of the charbroiled. That's the name they call it, charbroiled. And that's kind of become the thing to do down here too, because we really do have seen problems with them through the years. They've changed. Everything's changed. Their foods are not as safe as they used to be. Eggs are not as safe as they used to be. We see salmonella going through the shells and things like that. Bringing up, you need to cook your eggs all the way done and no over easies, because eggs can, especially, and this is one place if you're home, the home eggs, that they're included, then the chicken can have the salmonella before they lay the egg and pass it through the egg.
So there's actually a process of sous vide eggs that keeps them raw, but actually kills off the salmonella.
Pasteurized. That's what we have to use in nursing homes. We're required to use those in nursing homes. We cannot bring a raw egg into a nursing home anymore.
So a couple of questions that have popped up. Certainly one of them is, we've talked about some procedures, but some of us have got their gallbladder removed. How long does it take for our body to adjust to a gallbladder, or will we always be doing some type of supplement? Yeah, some type of supplement to ensure that we can deal with our gallbladder removal.
All right. So I was going to say, how old am I? And I had mine in, I had one done when I was, 45, I guess, and I'm 64 and I haven't absorbed yet. So it is so I have to really be careful with my diet. So what you can adjust is your diet. You tend to go lower in fat, and be careful with what you eat. That being the primary thing, or you be stuck close. And the other thing is just close to a bathroom. I mean, if you're eating things you shouldn't, high fat fried foods or fried chicken or something, just stay close to the restroom, because you're going to lose it. I mean, it's going to go through you. Alcohol as well. That's a problem. Now, some people get real constipated and they won't have a stool for days after, for days. And that's common with gallbladder removal as well. So it's not always the diarrhea, malabsorption, or the bowel leaks. It can be the other. There's a medication called, we use called, that's our bile, and I'm so Southern. This is when I spell BILE, bile salt absorbers. And that is cholestyramine is the one that I use primary in practice, because it was a powder. And there's pills as well. And I think people do pretty well on them. I like the powder. I still have to use it. If I travel, I have to carry it with me to this day. If I hit a different water system, or just the nerves of traveling, because this bile can be triggered just from stress. And that's hard to control. And also, the thing that gets me in more trouble is not eating. If I'm traveling, I don't want to have trouble, so I will delay eating. Well, that just delays the problem. So when you finally do eat, especially if you have a leak like I do, when I finally do eat, it just pushes that bile through. And so whatever I eat, that last meal is going to go straight through me. Sometimes it'll make me, it'll do it and it'll make you sick. It'll make you vomit. I mean, you're just sitting on the toilet. You might as well, I carry 2 containers because it just, you've already made the problem. You made the mistake when you ate whatever you knew you probably shouldn't have had, 2 hours ago. But that is very common, and but it's the bile that goes through your system real fast because these bile salts don't get absorbed and they get into the colon and form these bile salt foams. And
so I know we talked about Zofran for nausea. I mean, some people use ginger, and how is ginger as a spice that we can?
It is, and it's a natural antiemetic. It's we use it a good bit in pregnancy. Ginger crystals to chew on can be very beneficial for people going through chemotherapy. Very, very good natural source antiemetic. And I do encourage it for people that just need that little extra. Sometimes with chemo stuff, it's just way over. But sometimes if you have a light day or just something. Now, another thing with nausea, remember not to get too empty because that'll trigger it. And you have this hormonal response that you have, especially after these procedures or long-term with the gallbladder out, that you tend to get too empty. They tell, like with me, they say I get hangry, but it's about the same time. But all of a sudden and sometimes you'll start sneezing. I don't know why, but there's just the little reaction, and then you'll get to sneezing, and you'll kind of have that flush thing, and then you'll sneeze. And so, but don't get too empty. Keep something on your stomach, just a little something on your stomach. And by that, I mean, like you get to keep your little yogurt, the little things that you can eat, or low-fat cheese and like string cheese and the low-fat mozzarella cheese tend to be tolerated pretty well. There's some plant food, the soy, some of those plant-based foods that are good. I just don't use them quite as often down here, but there's quite a few on the market now that give you some variety. But things that are, but not processed. I don't mean processed, but no processed food like chips and stuff like that. Just none of that. No junk, no fried, no junk. If I'm talking crackers, oyster crackers, regular crackers, nothing that has fat in them like the Ritz crackers. Anything that fast food's going to put different things in foods, but usually they add fat to almost everything they do. So you have to be real careful if you're buying foods out. That's why cooking, just teaching somebody to like cooking is really beneficial. Just real light cooking. Even I used to, and I still, I wrote recipes for quite some time. I think I'm gonna scoot just a second. Be right back. Oh, here they are. All right. I grabbed some of my old recipes that I wrote recipes and did articles and books and stuff as the dietitian for Real Support. Does this look vaguely familiar? I know, Josh, it may look familiar to you.
Yeah, certainly for some of us old timers.
Yeah. But when I did these things, I made some changes in some of these recipes. I took just basic things and made some changes, and I was going to tell you some of the things that medium chain triglycerides. Medium chain triglycerides absorb differently than other fats. And back in the day, you had to buy these and buy them at the store and pharmaceutically. But coconut oil is this medium chain triglyceride. So it can be used in pure form to replace that medium chain triglyceride, and it can help with absorption of fat in the food, and you can replace fats in foods with this. And so that's one thing that really can be helpful and keep the calories in. It's one of those calorie-dense foods. Fats have 9 calories per gram, where carbohydrates and protein only have 4. So it's over double as much. So we try to get these things in. Usually we have trouble with absorption of fats, and we talked about that. And even the healthy ones, even the canola and the olive oil, can be hard to absorb. So, so coconut oil in patients who are having trouble with fat malabsorption can be very helpful. So, and that, like I said, it's going to be the coconut oil. And you can buy it.
And it's much less coconutty than I thought. I actually use it to make a turmeric paste that I use in coffee. and also in shakes to
Yeah. That's
yeah,
one of the good places. You can use it in a shake and really get those calories up from a
yeah.
good source, pretty clean source too. Um, the a
PB2.
PB2, there we go. PB2 is a protein source for
Yeah.
people that like protein, peanut butter and peanut butter flavoring in these little smoothies. And it's also, there's a product called PB2, and it is a low fat, it's powder formed peanut butter, and they took the fat out. So it can be used and give you a good protein source. So that's something else that we can use. I'm just kind of reviewing these little things real quick to see what some of the things that I used to really encourage. So, but that's something to use, and that's a good thing to try to give you some protein and some flavors together. That PB2. Crab meat substitute is really a fish. And some people, the imitation crab there you go. Very good. There you go. That's
They now
it.
make it organic. They have several versions of this, and there's one or two brands. Actually, Trader Joe's for a little bit of time came out with their own version of this as well, which was surprising. I think we've lost your camera there, Leanne. Hopefully you come back. We'll see if Leanne comes back. So it looks like we've lost Leanne. We're at our hour. So this can happen with live things. Sorry to have that happen today, but we'll be back next month or towards the end of this month. If you have ideas for a topic that we can discuss and or articles that we can add, we'd love to see them. And feel free to send us information at info@norcalcarsonet.org or drop us a line anywhere we send you email. So we look forward to seeing you next month. And that's it for this month. Hope you enjoyed the show.